Absolutely. You're fine. Okay, so we are recording the interview of Timothy Jones. This interview is being conducted by David Morse from the Wright State University Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University's Veteran and Military Center in Dayton, Ohio. It is 3:34 p.m. on the 13th of October, 2016. All right, Timothy. Do you go by Timothy or Tim?
Timothy.
Timothy. Okay. So, Timothy, tell me when and where you were born.
I was born on February 12th, 1980 in Marianna, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who are your parents?
My father is Anthony Roach. I know Roach. But he is from Charlotte, North Carolina, and Susan Gail Jones from Utica, New York.
Okay. What were their occupations?
My dad was an interior decorator for the Charlotte Hornets, and he would go around and do set decorations for music groups from the 70s, like Cameo, and he'd go on tour with them. And my mom, who's now retired, my father's now passed, and my mom is retired now, and she was a CNA, so she helped the elderly in nursing homes.
Very nice. Very nice. Did you get to watch any games? Did you go any free games?
I wish. Me and my father wasn't really in my life, not due to any of his anything he did. He just he had a different family, so I grew up with my brother and my mom. Okay. So I didn't really get a chance to talk to him until I was 6 or 7 years old, okay. And that was right before he passed away.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you had a brother.
Mm-hmm.
Younger, older?
An older brother. I have, from my mom's side, I have one older brother, and then on my dad's side, I have 3 brothers and a sister.
Okay. Did any of them end up joining the service?
Yes. So my brother Anthony was a Marine. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay.
He was on my dad's side.
All right. So talk to me a little bit about what you were doing before you joined the service.
Oh. Believe it or not, I was here in Miamisburg. My aunt was stationed at Wright-Patt Air Force Base here, and so when I graduated high school, I ended up moving with her here in Dayton, and spending a few months. And so my first job was TGI Fridays, and 2 things happened from that job. I knew I was never going to work at a TGI Fridays again, and I knew that I was going to follow in my family's footsteps, and that was join the military. So I made that decision. I was here for a few months, and then my aunt, who had had some relationship troubles, made sure that I came back to Kentucky at the time, and I enlisted a few months after that in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Okay. And what branch did you enlist into?
Oh, the only branch possible. Uncle Army, aunt Air Force, brother Marine, grandfather, I believe my grandfather actually was Army, I used to say Marine, but Navy. I wanted to complete the trifecta, and so that our family served in every branch of the service. I mean, we don't really count the Coast Guard, but.
Right. That's great. That's really interesting. So, joining the Navy, where did you end up going to your, do they call it basic training? Mm-hmm. Where did you end up going to basic training at?
Great Lakes. So by the time I joined, they had closed down the other cities for boot camp, so it was only, Great Lakes was the only option.
Okay.
So, and that was in August of 1998.
1998. Okay. How old were you then?
18.
18. Okay. All right. 1998. Wow. What was basic training like for you?
It was okay. So I went to Chicago. I ate at the pizzeria place there and got sick. So when I stepped off the base, everyone was like, "Welcome to the Navy." The RDCs were like, "Did anyone ever tell you what the Navy means?" And we're like, everyone started shocked, and it's like, "Never again volunteer yourself." So here I am, like, what did I just sign up for? And then as we get to the that night, I'm getting sicker by the hour, talking about, oh my God, I just got food poisoning, and I'm scared that I'm gonna get kicked out because I'm like, I just gotta tough it through. So here I am toughing through my first few days of boot camp with food poisoning. It was horrible. Getting assigned everything, and then next thing I know, it was, for me, I was like, this is my career. I liked the life. I kind of was previewed from my uncle, but now that I'm going through it and understanding, okay, this is, I want to serve my country. And so for me, boot camp was a process of really breaking down who I was, and I needed the military. I didn't really have the discipline that I thought I had, and as a young man. And then I needed that extra confidence boost that said, you know what, I can be what I thought I could be, and that was somebody. So boot camp was awesome, and going through that process, being around other guys who, it's funny because you'd hear the guys talk about how their daddy did this or they were ROTC, and what I found out are those who may not have had those experiences, who just had the heart. Really, what boot camp was designed to do, it really stuck to them, and it stuck to me. So I volunteered for a job and as a medical yeoman, and so responsible for the service records from start to jump, and so that was my first taste of responsibility, and I took it seriously, and I loved boot camp.
Okay. Any instructors pop out?
I can't remember their names, but my RDCs. One was a female. I wish I could remember her name, but she had red hair. And one gentleman he was bald, and so there's a good cop, bad cop, and the other one was a little younger. He had his hair, but everyone thought because he looked the nicest that he was really the bad cop. And they were kind of all bad cops for the first 2 weeks, and then they finally they were like, if you just do what we say, and allow us to teach you, you'll be fine. We're not going to, your life will not be bad. But if you don't, we're going to show you the Navy way. And so what stood out to them was that they were stern, direct, they cared, and they were not about, not the game plan, but they were about ensuring that you understood what you were getting into. And that was their job, and that was to weed out anyone that was not Navy ready. So those instructors, I wish I knew their names, stood out for that aspect of it.
Okay. Did you have training following?
I did. After boot camp, I ended up, I was a yeoman, was my designation. So I had to go to Meridian, Mississippi for A school. And so the day after we graduated, which was awesome, but also a pain because I left my gloves in my sea bag. So here I am in Chicago in freezing degree temperature, and my hands I'm just like frozen solid. And I'm like, I cannot wait to get on this plane so I can get some heat or I'm gonna lose my hands. And so going to Meridian was really a good change of pace for me. And then I was going with two of my friends that I was in boot camp with because he was a yeoman. So we went to the same place, so we knew each other. And I was like, oh, we're gonna still be friends and stuff. And we get to A school and we veered off in our own directions. But we're still cool. But it was a good welcome change of scenery. And it was actually kind of what I was used to because it was a small town. And that's what I grew up in.
That's good. Mm-hmm. That's real good. How long was your A training?
2 months. So we had a total of 4 months, and it was a little bit longer. It was 8 weeks, maybe 4. I think it was 2 months because I had a month off. Yeah, no, it was a month and a half. And then we got done in February, and then I had a month break. So just learning how to be a yeoman, and believe it or not, you would think it would be easy, but you had to teach how to type, how to be extremely meticulous with punctuation and how to form letters. Mm-hmm. And so that attention to detail that they teach in boot camp came in very handy doing my job. So.
Okay. Were you using like medical codes, or was it just? typing in general?
Typing, just typing in general. But
Okay.
there's a way, like you would think it'd be so easy just to type a letter, but there's this whole process that you have to do to keep it in military regulations, because you know the military has to have it in regulations. And before computers, it was typewriters. So we had access to computers. They're like, no, you're gonna learn how to do this on a typewriter, because if the power breaks out, you gotta bust out that typewriter. So I was like, crap. So here we are learning the old way of how to be a yeoman and the process of spacing and what it means, and then how if it's spaced incorrectly, and there are people who actually, they literally pull out the rulers for that. They're like, people do that, and it really can detect whether a letter is appropriate, whether it is professional, because if you send a correspondence under your CO, because you'll probably be typing that he's not, and you send it incorrectly and you send it overseas or somewhere, that could cause you don't want to besmirch your CO. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was a little redundant, but then I was like, you know what, although I may think it's redundant, there's a reason for it. So what made me successful is I was trainable and coachable.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so tell me, you're in Chicago. That's is that where your training was, or your first?
That's what boot camp was. Chicago, then Meridian, Mississippi, and then from there, when I was a kid, I told my mom I was going to do 3 things. I told her I was going to move to Japan. I told her I was going to encounter some difficulty, and then I told her I was going to be rich. And so when I got to A school, when we got a chance to pick where we wanted to go, I had already said I wanted to go as far away from my hometown as possible. I didn't join the Navy to go home. Mm-hmm. And so when we got to choose our duty station, I said I want Japan. Japan is my number 1. And so that's when we got our orders. I got MCAS Iwakuni, Japan. And I'm like, everyone's getting NAS this and NAS that. And I'm raising my hand. I'm like, what is MCAS? And the instructor was like, son, that's Marine Corps Air Station, Iwakuni, Japan. You're gonna go live with the Marines. And I was like, okay. He was like, do you run 6 miles? I was like, no, I signed up for 1.5 miles. And he's like, you're gonna learn today. So I was like, oh man, I'm sweating and everything like that. And I'm like, well, at least I got Japan. So I was like, and someone else had Yokosuka, and I was like, what's the difference? Is Yokosuka close to Iwakuni? I'm thinking I'm gonna have a great time. I had done no research. I just know I'm going to Japan. And so I was excited, and some people were excited to be to stay shore duty, but that was my overseas duty. So I was like, man, this is why I signed up for the Navy. And I got to call my mom and say, I got my orders, and I was like, I got Japan, and it was a good time. Just being 18, or at the time I just turned 19, and saying, you know what, 19 years old, African American kid, I get to leave the small town, and I also get to travel the world. That's an amazing opportunity.
Sure.
So, and I remember my uncle getting his letters from Korea, my uncle and my aunt, and I said, I can't wait to send a letter to my mom from Japan. That's gonna be awesome.
Right. So what was your, you get to Japan, did it meet your expectations? I mean, I imagine you had this elaborate idea of what Japan was going to be. Then you step into Japan. Was it like that?
It met my expectations, and it didn't. Like I missed the law that says if it can go wrong, it will go wrong, and it went wrong when I got there. Apparently, we left in the air. We had my plane to where I needed to go had already left, so I missed my flight when I got to Tokyo, and so I had to spend the night in Tokyo, and so I am literally in my American brain saying, "Oh, it's okay. I'll just get a hotel," and I leave the airport, not paying any attention, and I get to the parking garage, and I see everything is in Japanese, and then it hits me. I am not in California. I am in Japan. And literally I'm looking for, and I don't know where I have that moment where you're like, okay, take your little self back into the airport and you don't speak Japanese and tell them that you can't sleep, you don't know what to do. And so as I'm trying to get their attention, they don't speak English, I don't speak Japanese, and then so finally they take me to a police officer who does, and I say I can't leave the airport because I don't know where to stay and I have no yen. I completely forgot to do that because I'm thinking I'm going to California and it's going to be like America. And he's like, it's okay, you sleep here, and he leads me to where my plane is going to be taking off the next morning. And I thanked him for that. Everyone was very kind, and then there was these kids, and then one of them stands up and he starts speaking in Spanish. And he's like, puto, puto. And I'm like, I know I'm in Japan, but I know that Spanish word is for bitch. And he is calling me that. And so after he says that, the Japanese police officer yells in Japanese, and he says, no worry, I stay. And I'm like, don't know what was being said, but I'm glad he's staying. And so he wakes me up, and my first experience is I got to call my mom and tell her I'm in Tokyo. Blew my mind just to wake her up and say, Mom, step one was complete, I made it, But the kindness of that Japanese police officer really stood out to, wow, he didn't have to do that. Everyone was extended courtesy and kindness to me. And then I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna get in my base and I'm gonna get in so much trouble because I missed my flight, but everyone was kind and I didn't get into any trouble. So apparently it's commonplace for anyone who's never been outside the States to get messed up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, my first duty assignment was in Japan as well, but I actually got deferred to Hill Air Force Base, Utah.
Okay.
My wife, she has a unique blood disorder, and so they didn't have all the stuff there. But yeah, that was one place we really wanted to go was Japan. Unfortunately, I didn't make it. But
if you get a chance to visit, I highly recommend it. It's a great country. Now your nose is gonna fall off when you first get there.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Really?
They have these benjo ditches. And it's the raw sewage. Literally, I stepped off the plane and I was like, oh, there's my nose. Because I don't know what I'm smelling now. I am overwhelmed with senses. And then you got to pick it up and reattach yourself. And it takes a good month to be like, what is that smell?
So what was the culture like? I mean, how did you adapt to the culture and the environment that you're in?
Man, because I had a plan, and I knew that was as a kid, childhood kid, dream that says I'm gonna live in Japan. I knew that when I had that, I was gonna immerse myself. So I wanted to learn as much of the language, as native language as I could. I wanted to learn the concepts, and so I adapted by educating myself and showing a thirst for knowledge. And so for those I was around, they enjoyed giving me those daily lessons and Japanese lessons on how to say these greetings. But I took it a little step further. And in hindsight, maybe I was a little too aggressive at trying to learn, my way around. But I really wanted to, learn as much as I could when I went out into the country. That way, I didn't have to have people around to show me around. So I loved it. For me, it was exciting because I love anything new, and new and intriguing. And when I love it, I'm gonna work that much harder just to ensure that I know what's going on. Yeah. So adapting was fine for me.
That's good. What did you do for recreation?
Gosh, so I would drink, but not as heavy as starting out. But because the rule of thumb that was kind of acceptable was when you're on the base, the drinking age is 21. But when you leave off base, there really was no drinking age, so you could drink legally. And they would tell you as long as you are not belligerent coming back across, and then you handle yourself, you won't get into trouble. So having that responsibility at 19 years old, drinking legally, was fun, and it didn't go overboard. And then other than that, I love to dance. So, but I was really uncoordinated at that time. Like, I had no style or sense of fashion. I know it's a devil wears Prada line, but it's the truth. I came in there as a wrestling fan with an NWO shirt. It was. I look at my photos from that and I'm like, wow, that was horrible. So I was gonna watch wrestling, and then television was like 2 months behind. So I was like, I've seen all this. Well, I'm not gonna sit here and watch what I've already seen. I'm in another country, so I'm gonna go out and experience and explore. So I loved hiking, and just getting out and seeing the country. Like, as I'm talking to you now, I can literally picture. I have the pictures of leaving base and being in Iwakuni and that little walk. And then going to the chicken shack as they have it. I can see it just like I'm here with you right now. And I love that. And I would do that as much as I could.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. So when you got to, let's talk about on base or your duties there. Were you, I'm trying to picture this. So you were being in Japan. That considers being on ship, correct?
yes, overseas duty.
Yeah, overseas. Right. Yeah. So was what you did in Japan as your day-to-day job very much like your training that you got? Was there any difference?
Yes. Oh my God, there was a major difference because it was a Marine base. They didn't have a yeoman, so the command I went to had been requesting a yeoman for a long time. So but their billets were for an E4 and E6. I was an E3. And so they didn't know when the next time they were going to get a yeoman was, so I filled as an E3 and E6 billet. So my responsibilities had everything to do. I should not have been doing the E6 responsibilities, but I was thrown into the fire. And so I had to literally apply everything from A school to what I was doing in my job. And then I had some PNs who were able to guide me, but they didn't do the job. And so I didn't have the freedom to kind of make added mistakes because I had a chief that would make sure that I was doing it right. I was a chief. So understanding that was a little bit of a transition. And then Marines do things differently than Navy, so I had to ensure that what they were doing, what the Marines were doing was not what the Navy does. And so that was the first thing that had to be swapped out. And my Master Chief knew that. So we really had to spend some time developing a plan. How do we take these regulations and put them in Navy regs? So that was not a challenge, but it was a lesson to see the differences in the branches, and even one that falls under the Department of the Navy.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Very interesting.
yeah.
Wow. So how long did you stay there in Japan?
For my whole service, it was 27 months that I did. So I'm pretty sure we'll get into that. But I was in Japan for that run. I came up for orders, and I was supposed to go to Lemoore, California, but that did not happen. But my time in Japan was, although filled with some things that happened, I remember those good days that I did have, you know.
Okay.
So it's a little over a year that I was in Japan, in Iwakuni.
A little over a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's moving on from well, let's talk about a little more of Japan. Right?
Okay.
Are you comfortable with talking
Yeah.
about a little more about Japan?
Yeah.
You mentioned you had your good experiences. You had all your good experiences. What were some of those bad experiences or other experiences that you had?
So when I first got to my duty station, I started receiving some phone calls, and the voice on the other end was just, I'm watching you, which was a little disconcerting, only because I had a Japanese phone number, and the person that had that, people were my family in the States, and a few friends that I knew. So when I started getting those calls, at first I brushed it off, but as it kept happening, my alarm started going, going up, and then they were beginning to become more violent and a little more threatening. And so I didn't know how to really say I'm receiving these phone calls from a male without it raising some red flags due to don't ask, don't tell. And it was number one, I was scared about, number one, I don't know who it is. And so one night it happened while I was in the club in Iwakuni, and this time the voice just was like, I'm watching you right now. And that was kind of like the straw that just spooked me, because I'm like, the club was very small, and I'm trying to figure out who's got a cell phone on right now, who can I see, and I can't see anyone. It was dark. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna leave. And I had been drinking, and so as I walked past EMPs and I walked back to my barracks, trying to see if there's anyone following me. None of that was happening. I went home and I lied down in my barracks, and I woke up to a 6'5" Marine on top of me. And so for the next 20 or so minutes, it was the worst moment of my life. And what was supposed to be, a night out turned into a nightmare. And so the only thing I could think of myself at the time was to try to just say, how do I get out of that situation? And so I ended up, stroking this guy's ego, saying, you know what, I like this, and then finally saying, I'm gonna be sick, I need you to let me up. And so he let me up, and I went and started beating on my corporal's door from that. And so I didn't want to report what happened, but my corporal's girlfriend had said, you know what, you've got to report it, because if you don't, he could do this to somebody else. And so I reported the incident. My guardian at the time was very, very kind, and but in 1999, so it was a different military. So you got don't ask, don't tell. You got a lot of, okay, well, why didn't you fend him off? You're a guy. Why didn't, what happened? Did you ask for this? Is this a relationship? And as I tried to say, well, no, I've been getting these phone calls, and I don't know if they're related, but this is, wasn't wanted, it wasn't warranted, and now I'm defending my character versus being a victim. And so that happened, and it almost turned into a light switch night and day. People started not wanting to talk to me. People it got around so fast that I had reported this incident that people from incident were calling me friends, they're calling me the F word, and it just became a little bit of a toxic situation. It wasn't as bad as it got at that time. It was latent, minor comments here and there, because there's a little bit of care because I just reported an incident. So a few weeks after reporting the incident, CID came to me and said, you know what, hey, we've kind of found out who this guy is. We need you to verify, because he's assaulted several other service members. And so when we found out, he went through his situation, and I testified against him. Needless to say, he received 6 months for the assault of several service members. And so that at the time we were like, okay, there's 6 months in a dishonorable discharge. And so I didn't really know the laws back then, but it was just out of my hair at that time. But it didn't stop the domino effect of what had already started happening, which was people were aware I had a male-on-male sexual assault encounter, and instead of asking me about it, they just automatically assumed, oh, he's gay. He can't get kicked out of it for assault, but I'm on people's radar, and people don't want to be associated with me. And then I had a conversation with my friend because I couldn't figure out how he got my phone number. And then he disclosed to me that he gave him my number. And and what had happened was this gentleman who assaulted me was a sergeant. And I was just in Marine terms, a lance corporal, but a seaman. I was an E3. And so he was like, hey, I want to show him around so, he knows what to do in Japan because we've got to, let's stick together, let's show him the ropes. So he gave him my number not knowing what he had planned to do. And so when he apologized to me for doing it, it was a moment where I could say, number one, I forgive you, but I have nothing to forgive you for because you did not assault me. Mm-hmm. This guy did, and I can't hold you responsible for somebody else's actions. He's accountable to himself. I'm so glad I had that conversation because he hung himself either a couple of weeks or a month after that conversation that we had, and
your friend,
my friend, and he was getting discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and what I was seeing was someone getting broken down by he was one of the strongest individuals I had ever met, and I would see how they would treat him, and then the mental effect it would have on him, and then no one would do anything about it. That was what was difficult. People would say things in front of sergeants and in front of officers, and they would look the other way, and so that was carte blanche to be able to say and do anything that you wanted to do. And when he finally had enough of it, he took his life, and I just saw him eroding. And so then I showed emotion. I just lost my friend. Matter of fact, I saw them as they cut him down, and that's the first dead body I'd ever seen. And just that moment is real. And so after that, my CO pulls me into the office and said, my name has come up twice in relation to homosexual activity. If my name comes up a third time, they're going to kick me out. And so that was the culture that existed that I didn't know was there until I started going through these situations. I was getting counseling for the trauma, and then the chaplain would quote a Bible scripture to me and would tell me about the effects of homosexuality and that we're going to hell. And then he'd say, so much you can tell me before I report it to your CEO, and then we'll kick you out. This was after the CEO had that conversation with me. So now I am concerned for my job, and I can't process the fact of being raped and everything that led up to that. And now I'm seeing is it somehow my fault. And then, so I know work is being done in the counseling sessions, and then one of the sessions was so vulgar, he took a rubber band, and he just was like, this is you, this is your backside, and he just stretches it, and he's like, to a point, and it breaks, and he's like, do you want to have a colostomy bag? And I was like, okay, well, I have no idea where this is going and why you're telling me this, but you know what? I can't trust you. I can't trust you with my therapy. I have some feelings for being raped, and I have feelings for losing my friend. Literally, mentally, I was just breaking down, and to the point, it got to the point where the hazing got worse. They would put socks in the form of male genitalia. They'll set it outside my bed. They make comments. They started doing what they were doing to him, and then people would want to fight me. And so then I had requested, I moved from HHS to logistics. And so my new Gunny, I was like, listen, I can't. This is too much. This is getting out of hand. And thankfully, they were like, well, what should we do? And I'm like, I'm gonna, if it's not, something's not done, I'm gonna take. If my CEO's not gonna do anything, I'm gonna take it up a chain of command above his head, because Barry Winchell had just been murdered in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. My friend committed suicide. I was like, they are killing people, and whether I'm gay or not, I am afraid for my safety. And people are already starting to make threats to me. And so they moved me from my barracks. Before they did that, they paired me with my last roommate. And the first thing he said to me was, I don't like niggers and I don't like fags. And so I was like, okay, well, I have nothing to tell you. And I guess I'm not going to sleep. And when I told my gunny that, they moved me, because then I was like, this guy's gonna kill me. Like, he has made his intentions clear, and he is actively trying to engage me in physicality, and I'm not gonna. At that point, mentally, it was one of those things where if I fight back, I'm gonna get in trouble. And so they moved me to NDOC, and which was a little bit more comforting because people didn't know who I was, because you were just getting to your command. So if someone was living there, you didn't know who he was, so you didn't have any reason to dislike him until they moved to the commands, and then all of a sudden that was the first thing they figure out is who I was. And so I couldn't eat at the chow hall on the side of the island I was at. I had to go on the other side just to have any kind of peace and make any friends. And so that was my year in Japan until it got to the point where my roommate had said that I told him I was gay. And so they tried to separate. They were separating me, and I did. And then the CEO was like, we're going to kick him out. We're going to give him a dishonorable discharge. And then my master chief had said, well, why are you going to give him a dishonorable discharge? He's done nothing wrong. And at that time, I just made E4, petty officer. I just received some awards, and you're saying you're judging this guy, you're judging his character, who, for all intents and purposes, is an upstanding sailor, versus this allegation made against him, versus this guy who is being dishonorably discharged. And the only difference is that he's a Marine and he's Navy. So you're believing the Marine over the Navy guy. And so in the end, my master chief went out. I got an honorable discharge, and that was my time out of Japan. And before that, they had said they would make this go away if I chose to stay another 3-year tour, which I had an option of re-upping. I think it was another 3 years or another year of re-upping and staying if I chose to. But I was like, no. After the last year and a half I've had, I need to leave. And so they pushed it forward. And so I don't regret it, because I knew in my heart that if I had stayed, I would have been dead. Because what was being taken place there, and I think I can't speak for what they wanted or what they didn't want. I just knew that for me, that would not have been the right decision.
Do you think any of this, the actions that had taken place, the way you were treated during any of this, do you think that any of it was derived from branch biasism, the Marine versus Navy?
Oh yeah, I heard so many times that the Navy's soft, and when I reported the incident, it was he's a Navy guy. He's soft. When he did it to 3 or so Marines, then they got their attention, because they're like, oh, wait a minute, this guy must be dangerous. And it wasn't the fact that I was the first one that he did it to. It was the fact that this guy's a predator. And so now, even though that was the case, I'm still a Navy guy. I'm still soft. I'm just not one of the boys, and I was never really one of the boys to begin with. And now I'm bringing up a situation that's making the boys look bad. So we got to protect the title of Marine. And I don't believe. I never really thought it was the whole Marine Corps. I just thought it was some bad apples. But for me, I said I need to go to a Navy base where I can be under Navy regulations, because I never experienced what I saw being a part of the Navy at that time. And from all the conversations that I had, so many were like, "You just need to go to NAS. Like this is," and even when I got my orders to Lemoore, they called me. I could see the difference in leadership immediately because they made me feel so welcome before I even stepped foot on that command. So I was so excited about getting out of Japan, and so concerned that I was going through this process that I wouldn't. And unfortunately, I never got to see Lemoore, California, because I was kicked out before that. But I could tell immediately that I had felt secure, and that also let me know how bad it had gotten. The fact that they were calling me and people were calling on my behalf to let them know what the situation was. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of branch bias and personal bias when you're talking about that type of subject matter.
Sure. Let me ask you this: once going through a traumatic event such as that, and then being attacked, or I guess I don't know if attack's the right word, but just your character, who you are, being questioned. What did you focus on? What was your focal point to stay strong during that time?
Oh man, I didn't have a lot. I was hanging on by a thread, and by a very, very slim thread. And literally, honestly, I focused on alcohol because that was the only thing that I could get through the day. I started drinking way more, and it was affecting my work performance. But I was giving a little bit of a leg because everyone knew what I was going through. So although the work performance was suffering, it was like, but he is going through this. And so there wasn't a lot. I had ended up making some good friends, and then they were some wonderful individuals who made it okay just to be okay. And they would used to say, I would go to their barracks and they'd just be like, you don't have to be anybody, you just need to be yourself. And I mean, literally I was crying, crying myself to sleep. And that was how it was. And so I would want to focus on my family, but because I come from a military family, I felt that I had let them down. And here I am, this proud guy who's not able to fulfill at that time, which was my life's dream. And it was just all falling away from me. And I didn't know who to fire and trust. So I would say I was grasping on to hope. Would probably be the right thing, because I had a lot of hope that good will prevail, or something good's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen now, but I was holding on to that. And then when I got to Lemoore, when I left Japan, I was like, man, I just want to get there. I got to Puget Sound, and then I was told, well, you know what? We can override anything that the command does. They are a separate entity, and if we choose and we want to put you back in, they'll never know it. You'll never see them again. You'll go back to your duty station. So then my hope, my trust began to reform, because I'm like, oh my God, I never said I was gay. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And so I had this hope that I was going back to go do my job, and I'd go to Lemoore. Then they made a phone call to my CO. And the next thing I know, 2 weeks later, I was back in Tennessee. And so I was like, I have no idea what transpired on that conversation. But something happened where somebody used something, and I was back home. And so, again, I lost hope. And then I found hope again, because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna sue or something, because I want to serve my country. This is not right. And so I just held out to say, I don't want to besmirch anybody. All I want to do is serve. and I'm getting kicked out for something I didn't do. So it'd be different if I'm saying I'm gay and I'm not. And so that's what I held on to for the longest time.
Once you got back to Tennessee, what did you do at that point?
Oh, I stayed home. The first thing I did was cry in my mom's arms. Man, I couldn't tell her what happened. I just couldn't say, how bad it was. So I just cried, and she just let me cry. And so now it's an identity issue. What am I gonna do with my life? You know? But I'm still facing issues from what I just experienced. And so I went on unemployment for a little bit, and then I ended up getting a job at Convergys and trying to find some sense of normalcy as I was still holding out hope that I could get back in the military. And I did that for a little bit. And I was hanging around, I still got a chance to be around service members because I was right near Fort Campbell. So I had friends who were serving and Army guys, and so I was excited because I still could be around the lifestyle and create that brotherhood and still miss it. And so I did that for a little bit, and then 9/11 happened. And then some seen since, some of them were special forces. And then I got mad. Because now I want to join my brothers and sisters. I want to join them, and I can't. And it's all because of my character. My character is now gone. Who am I? And that was tough, And knowing that my uncle was serving, and all of these things that are happening, and I am now not a part of that. And I felt cheated. So I was just very pissed off. And so I just continued down the rabbit hole of the drugs and the drinking. And it really started to intensify to a point where that became what I would want to do. And so when I got into a relationship, and then that was abusive, and that was the first time I really contemplated, taking my life. And I attempted, and it was a moment where I think I saw the light, as they say, and then I felt cold, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to die this way, and then, and I didn't go to the hospital, but I survived that, and that kind of became the theme of my life for the next 10 or so years. So that was in 2001, 2011, when I came out and really wanted to change my life. So,
pushing forward from there, what are you doing now?
Now I do sexual assault and rape prevention trainings. I go around college campuses and military bases, and I talk about my journey. I today just want to help someone. I don't want it to take 18 years for somebody to come out of depression or come out of suffering in silence. I don't want it to take someone that long. So my story doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to everyone else. And if sharing my story, standing on my story can help another victim become a survivor, or at least be able to get comfortable enough to report what happened to them, and that they know that they have a safe space and a team that will be there for them, then I've done my job correctly. And to point out that I know that what I went through back then, 18 years ago, is not necessarily where it is today. But if there's a stigma associated, I want more people to utilize the resources available to them today. Because I tell people, had these resources been available to me back then, I would still be serving. I would be staring down retirement versus 27 months. But if you're not utilizing the resources, then what was my sacrifice for? You know, why did I succumb to homelessness and stuff? No, you know, and so that's what I do today, and training and talking about mental wellness, mental health care. So many people bash the VA system and talk about their service. I'm not one of them. I had some bad experiences, but I loved my Navy experience. And the VA may have issues, but the VA saved my life. You know, when I started getting the services, I thought the VA was like active duty, and that's not the case. And when I realized that, and I got my team together, I'm like, when I hear people say they don't want to go to the VA, I'm like, that's your first mistake. You know, and you don't want that to be your last one. You know, I waited 10 years before I stepped into that VA system. Had I gone in sooner, I'd be further along. But shoulda, coulda, woulda. I don't care about that anymore out there, man. I'm here now. So what I do now is talk about those experiences and really champion those causes and champion mental health professionals. Because I have made it out on the other side. I still have ways to go, but I am certainly better than I was 18 years ago, and I'm better than I was just last year. So that's what I get to do today. And
It's amazing.
I love it.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. How much do you, I mean, in your job currently, how much do you run into similar situations? I mean, you don't have to be specific or anything like that. Just, I mean, do you find yourself running into people that are like, you know, hey, Timothy, you know, I have a very similar situation, what, you know, and looking for you to coach them through and give the specifics, you know, outside of your speeches.
Every time.
Wow.
And that's what blew me away. The first time I spoke to Special Forces, a group of Special Forces men and women, I had 3 Special Forces individuals, men, come to me, and I had to, you know, direct them to their sharp coordinators, but say, and they said, I have experienced this. And then there was a couple of others that knew of situations and didn't know how to intervene. So every single time that I've spoken, I've either spoken to a victim, someone who is not sure how to come forward, someone who has just recently come forward, or someone who has a buddy or someone that says, I need to, how do I intervene? Because I know I have information, and now I need to act because I wasn't sure if I could do it, but after hearing you, I can. And that let me know that I'm in the right field, and that it's tough reaching back into your past sometimes and pulling out those most vulnerable aspects of it. But I've gotten to a place because I have a team that I can do that. And then I do the work when I get back home and continue to do it because it doesn't just stop. But because I can do that, and when I hear those conversations and when I have those conversations, that's when I know that that's my why. Why was this all for this? You know. So we have a long way to go, but the more that we can stand on our stories, because there's some who just cannot cope with what they've dealt with. And I've had those conversations. And some of them just want to be able to go to Walmart to not look over and peer over the shoulders. And when they ask me about, you know, how do you do that? I want to be strong like you. I have to remind them that they are strong like me. And it just takes a little bit of work every day. But the decision to be there is what's important. When you make the decision, then everything else will come and fall in play. And sometimes it's tough for us to make that decision to say, well, we deserve better, we be better, we will be better. But it starts with the conversations that we have with ourselves. And that was the first thing that had to change with me. And that's kind of what I help coach others with. With the conversations that they have, the team that's surrounding them, and what is the environment. Because there is an environment that's not conducive. And so if we can, that's kind of where it starts. That's my question.
Yeah. Wow. All right, so kind of wrapping this up, your time in service. What is your overall feelings towards the military and our current situation?
Wow. Man, you're gonna make me cry, man. You're gonna make me cry for this reason. Yeah, my time in service ended before I would have liked it to. And I had some things happen that I probably wished would not have, but they did. But today, I am living the best life I have ever thought possible, that I never knew was possible, based upon my military service. And I get to do what I absolutely love. And I had no idea this is what I love to do. I get to serve, but just in another capacity. And that it reaffirmed everything that I have gone through. And so my overall feelings is I love my time in service. The good, the bad, the indifferent, and the very ugly. Because it has made me who I am today. It has made me the strong individual that I am today, to be able to say I don't want to escape what happened. I'm going to live, I'm going to deal with it head on, and I'm going to run through it. And you best believe I'm going to come out better from the other side. I don't want to escape anymore. And so I have to love my military service. And it took me a long time to get to that point to say, well, if I'm going to love it, I got to love everything of it. And so to wrap it all up, man, it was a wild ride, but I can at least look back and do some great good in the world and for others. And for that, I'm forever grateful. So I did this in order to get to here, but at least I got here. And it's bittersweet because there's some that don't. So for everyone that doesn't, I know that I got to push that much harder and understand that, man, I'm appreciative of it. So let's ride this wave and do what we can do. So I love my military service.
That is awesome. That is amazing. What would you say? I mean, I know you do speeches all the time. I know that you go out there and you have a message that is your purpose now. This is meant for those that this is going to be archived for hopefully as long as we're a country. But what would you say to the future generations, the ones that are just naive to life in general, or naive to the experiences of life? What would you tell them? What is your message to them?
Man, so I'm going to look directly in the camera for this. My message to you is for you. You are the author of the story. You can take these mistakes and turn them into lessons that don't have to be repeated. And I'm a living testament as to what can happen when one decides to transform their life. And hopefully you watching will be able to take these lessons and to transform your generation and to make it better. Better than where it was at, and better than it can ever be. And we can absolutely get there. And your voice matters. You matter. That's my message. Believe in yourself, and others will begin to believe in you. That adage, sing your song, and everyone else will begin to hear it. and will love you for it. And that's what I've learned. And it's been the most rewarding aspect of this life I've had. My mom said, I re-earned my name. Because there's a part of my journey that I wasn't proud of. And I had to forgive myself for that. And when she said, when I was going through the jail process, that she was so proud of me for taking a step up and being accountable, it meant so much. So for y'all, be accountable. Sing your song. I'm listening. May not be here, but I'm listening.
That's great. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we did not go over?
Seek treatment. It doesn't make you less of a man or a woman or person or mouse, anything. Seek treatment. If you have it, that makes you strong because you're aware that you need assistance. And people can't help you if they don't know that you need help. So it's okay. It's okay. I get help every day.
Yeah.
And I'm a better man for it. So that's what I would say to anyone else. That's my last thing to say. Get help if you need it.
It's amazing. Well, Timothy, thank you for your service, sir. Thank you for your story.